It's time for 41 is the Mic, a weekly Chiefs podcast with Nick Jacobs of KSHB 41 and Matt Derrick of Chiefs Digest. 41 is the Mic starts now.
Yes, this is 41 is the Mic, and I am Matt Derrick alongside loose ankle enthusiast Nick Jacobs from KSHB 41. Nick? Are you very excited and happy that Patrick Mahomes apparently has the loosest ankles in America?
Yeah, I mean, when Andy said that, I was like, all right then. But no, I mean, obviously everybody sprained their ankle at some point and knows how much that can hurt. One of the last times I did, it wasn't like Patrick Mahomes had, but I was walking to Bishop Miege. Bishop Miege was playing. I can't remember. I think they were playing St. James Academy. It was over a year ago. And I had to park out in the field. That's where they had the overflow park for that day. And there was a hole in the field, and I stepped in the hole. And so my camera went flying, and the eyepiece kind of got knocked off a little bit. And so I had to rearrange that, put that back on. But, dude, my ankle, the left side of my ankle was throbbing the entire time. And next morning, I had a lot of bruising on that side there and everything, but I could walk on it and everything. So, but yeah, no, that's so I think we all can know to a certain extent what Mahomes is going through. That's why I marvel at how he can play on that multiple years, how he did in 2020, either 2018 or 2019. And then whenever he did, from the high ankle sprain in the playoffs, and then when he did again tonight and some other times, like I just marvel at it because like it's insane because that thing, whether you're taping it up or not, like just the way the toughness Mahomes has and how he can kind of block out some of that pain. And I'm like, man, if I were you, I would not run on this. And then he ran on it a couple of times, and I'm like, oh, that dude is tough.
Yeah, I mean, if there's anything worse than rolling your ankle, it's rolling your ankle a second time in 1 week. That's pretty much what happened to Mahomes. And so I don't blame him at all for as uncomfortable as he was. And, he mentioned that the trainers were encouraging him to take it easy and take it ginger coming off the field. And I can only imagine what most Chiefs fans were thinking during that commercial break when, cut away, you see Mahomes on the ground. Didn't get to see him, start to come off the field, and then halfway through the walking off the field with one person on each side of his shoulders, draping his arms, and then he's just like, I can walk, I can limp this off.
Yeah, I mean, were there thoughts running in my head, and probably a lot of other Chiefs fans and yours as well? Sure, but I'm like, I'm just gonna wait and see what happens, and then. As soon as I saw Carson Wentz put his hat back on, I was like, Mahomes going back in. So it's obviously not to that level. And then Lisa Salter's report came out, and I'm like, all right, they're good. So for him, it's just a matter of getting it handled with Bobby and the trainers and kind of getting whatever swelling he needs to worked out and whatever stability he needs to be able to be a part of practice, but also not really push that too much because the Broncos defense is going to try to go after that and try to make him move around and try to make him miserable on it.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably the one thing to look forward to, especially with the short turnaround. The Chiefs held him out of Wednesday's practice, which is going to be a very light and no helmets, no pads, nothing practice. Wouldn't be surprising at all. So, let's see how he's used in practice this week. But, other than having, some tape on that ankle, wasn't anything else. He wasn't, on crutches or a boot or anything like that coming out of the stadium tonight. So a good sign for Mahomes and certainly a deep sigh of relief for the Chiefs. But an exciting finish, Nick. I mean, and Mahomes put the Chiefs on the board a couple more times after that injury. Not only the touchdown to take the lead, but then the touchdown to win it in overtime. The offense, I mean, this was, to me, I mean, it's the next step for Mahomes and this kind of streak that they've been on as far as just getting him back to himself. This was the cleanest game he's played all season, right?
Yeah, and the thing I want to let people kind of realize here is part of it, if you're frustrated and you're like, man, they really should have rolled Tampa and done this and that because they didn't have Evans and they didn't have, they didn't have Godwin. I'm telling you, Liam Cohen is a good offensive coordinator. He understands defenses, and he knows how to get his quarterback into rhythm, and he understands all that. That's why I asked Andy Reid about him this week. That's why I asked about the tight end this week to Steve Spagnuolo. That's why I asked Matt Nagy about Vita Vea, and that's why I asked some of the questions that I did, because it jumped up on tape when they were playing the Falcons last week that there was going to be some guys who were going to be disruptive. And the thing is, Todd Bowles – it looked like to me Todd Bowles used a lot of their Super Bowl game plan from a coverage perspective. He didn't have the same pass rush that could overwhelm Mahomes in the same way, but they copied a lot of the same principles, it felt like, with the way Mahomes was moving around. And I mean, they were able to take advantage of some of the zone coverages because the Tampa just doesn't have the same personnel in the secondary that they did during that Super Bowl run. But and at linebacker too, and they don't have the same pass rush. But other than that, everything's aces. But no, I mean the Buccaneers, they're a tough team. Todd Bowles knows Steve Spagnuolo, he knows Andy Reid, and he knew what they were going to do. He had a good idea on tendency, just like Antonio Pierce did the week before. So that's part of it. And then the field itself, this isn't a knock on the grounds crew in any way, shape, or form. They do a phenomenal job, but there's only so much you're going to be able to do to combat rain and, the draining off of the field and things of that nature. So that, I think that slowed down the Chiefs a little bit more than it seemed like it did Tampa at times. Some of the Chiefs defense looked a little bit sluggish in some spots at times that they normally wouldn't have. Tackling wasn't as great as it was sometimes, but I mean, look, they made some key plays and key moments when they had to.
Yeah, it's, and really you look at the numbers, and Baker Mayfield had 200 yards passing. That's a far cry from where they're at. And yes, take the consideration of they don't have Evans, don't have Godwin. They were still able to move the football last week against the Falcons and had a good week. But you hold Baker to 200 yards, passing. The running game, which Bucky Irving led them in rushing with 24 yards. They had 95 yards as kind of a committee that included some Baker scrambles. Rashad White had his touchdown run, had a couple of runs. Sterling Shepard had a couple of runs. I mean, they get it in a few ways, but once again, the Chiefs defense held the run game in check, didn't really let Baker, get into an extended rhythm. I mean, this wasn't the flashiest game that Chiefs defense has played, but they kept all their streaks going. I mean, don't give up more than 28 points, kept the opposing running back down and kept them in check. I mean, if this is the defense's B effort, I mean, you're okay with that, right?
Yeah, especially tonight on a sloppy, on a I don't want to say sloppy field, but I want to say a field that is going to slow you down because of the various points of rain at the time. You're not going to be able, because that's why the Chiefs were doing some stuff they were doing with the jet sweeps early on, because they were trying to, whether it was a jet sweep or they were trying to do the end around or all that type of stuff. They were, some screen games, they were trying to misdirect to get them out of position and take advantage of them being out of position on a wet field. And that they were trying to do it, but Tampa was disciplined, knew a lot of that was coming, and they were there and ready and waiting for a lot of that. So, yeah, the Chiefs, I felt like the Chiefs offense was looking for a spark. And sometimes they got that way a lot last year, and there's other times where like they're just looking for somebody to be that fire starter that gets them going, gets them in rhythm. And tonight that ended up being Patrick's pass to DeAndre Hopkins, that big throw into triple coverage that Hopkins came down with. And that it's impressive play on both fronts for Mahomes and Hopkins to put it in that spot and for Hopkins to go get it. But on top of it, just the trust that's going to build for down the road, and it did in that game for Patrick and DeAndre together. That play is gonna pay dividends for quite some time.
I know that Next Gen Stats said that was Mahomes' lowest chance of completion that was completed, I think they had it at like about a 12.5% chance of completion since 2018. I haven't seen what throw that was. To me, I mean, the last throw that I can really remember that the Chiefs having that wowed me that much as far as great throw and amazing contested catch was one that Tyreek Hill had, I think, against the Saints from Alex Smith back in his rookie year. 2016. I mean, that was a while ago. But that, yeah, I mean, if that play does not tell you everything that you need to know about, one, DeAndre Hopkins' ability to catch the football, and two, Patrick Mahomes is already has trust in DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, you learn both those things in that play.
A play I'll throw in there that I'm thinking of, it's 2019. It was the Houston Texans. Patrick threw up in either double or triple coverage near the end zone, and Tyreek leaped over the safety and came over and grabbed the football.
I remember that one, yeah.
And that one I didn't think had a high probability either, but Tyreek went over the top of those defenders and went and got that one. So that could be another one on the list. I'm curious percentage-wise what that would be at. Probably be similar in some ways. But yeah, no, I mean, like, because then they went to DeAndre on the touchdown. They got him the touchdowns, first touchdown as a Chief, and then did the Remember the Titans dance for his old team, even though he probably will claim that it wasn't. And he tried to, hem haw around it whenever he says, I just like the movie Remember the Titans. Okay. And all your teammates were there to help you out with that one. Yeah, so I mean that was a nice little unity thing that lets DeAndre know he's a part of the group and like he belongs with them, and that was a good moment for him. And then the slant route that he got for another touchdown. Like I hope this is an awakening long term that the Chiefs need to have different styles of receivers. I know they keep wanting to chase the explosiveness of Tyreek with Worthy and with McCole and so on, but you can have a balance of reliable guys because DeAndre really took over that role tonight of what Rashee Rice was doing next to Kelce early on before the injury. And so and when Juju comes back, I'm really intrigued to see what that offense can do and if there's anything else they do. Because the biggest thing with Xavier is they've got Xavier drifted on that one. That should have been a walk-in touchdown to start out that game, and that game has completely different momentum. He just unnecessarily started drifting immediately off the route. Nobody's pressing him. He just took off and drifted on the route the entire time for 15 yards, and then he made the throw difficult for Mahomes to where he's supposed to stay on that red line, and he was wanting to get as far away from that safety as possible, and I get that, but like give Mahomes room for error for you to be able to go and get it. So I think Worthy's still got some bad habits with how he drifts sometimes, and then tracking the ball, he's still working on that. So there's still a lot of room for improvement there. But if they get to that point and DeAndre Hopkins can help him get there and Juju Smith-Schuster can help him get there, then it'll all be worth it.
What were your thoughts on just the way that DeAndre Hopkins and Travis Kelce worked together? Because that was what, stood out to me as far as, I think that both these guys were able to find space because, Tampa Bay at least knew that they needed to pay attention to DeAndre Hopkins. And as a result, I don't think they were paying as much attention as they wanted to Travis Kelce. And Kelce has the 14 catches for 100 yards. Hopkins goes for 86 yards. That's, for a guy that hasn't been here 2 weeks, Nick, that's amazing. But both of these guys, they're so good at finding just space. They're finding the voids in the zone defense. How effectively can you see that these two guys are already playing off of each other?
Oh, it's already going to make defenses nervous now. Because those two guys understand, like you're talking about, they understand spacing. They understand now if Travis runs this route, I run this, and one of the two of us is going to be open. Then, like I said, if you throw Juju into that mix down the road here, that's a third guy that really understands this offense. So then the Chiefs have three reliable players that can all space the defense out. They may not be burners, but they are guys that can space the defense out, be reliable, and help move the sticks on a regular basis. So That's key for them right now. And the other key is getting Worthy, like I said, up to speed. And Justin Watson had a strong, reliable performance in a couple spots tonight that really kind of kept the rhythm going on some drives. So, yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I mean, there's still parts of this offense that I'm like, if they tinker with this, and this, then I think they can raise their game and make it to 30, 35 whenever they get to Buffalo or down the road in the playoffs and everything. But I know people like say in the comment section that I'm negative, but you come here for the reality of what do they need to do to win a third title. And that's part of what the whole purpose of this podcast is. That's the reality of what this podcast is supposed to be. And if you've ever been around coaches or players, they're always obsessed with getting better. They could have what you and I consider a flawless game, and there's 12 things Andy Reid is talking about that they need to get better at, because that's what you do if you want to have the success they do and you want to have the culture that they do.
100%. And one area that kind of fits into that to me is it's Kareem Hunt in the run game, because I could nitpick the 3.9 yards per carry. I mean, hey, you love to be above 4, that'd be ideal, but this was an improvement over some. It was lower than that last week, but 27 carries, 100 yards rushing. And one thing that Kareem does, and he did it again today, is that he just doesn't get stopped behind the line of scrimmage. I mean, I think he went into this week as second highest, success rate among running backs in the league, which measures essentially, your ability to gain positive yards on each play. Mm-hmm. And he, once again, was doing that. I mean, to the point where the Chiefs yes, he had some good chunk plays and everything like that. But for the most part, I mean, especially when the Chiefs get to the goal line and they're inside the 5, Nick, I just do not understand. I mean, there's no reason to me to do anything else but just hand the ball to Kareem Hunt and frankly, just let him run behind the guy that both of us, I think, will say, you can take care of Trey Smith.
Mm-hmm. Pay this man his money. Yeah, no, Trey Smith, Trey Smith he's a bulldozer. He always has been. He's a road grader. Talked about it on this podcast for quite some time. Like, this dude buries people for fun. He is the Undertaker. He buries people, and he says rest in peace while he is pancaking them. And he will lay people out. And people will say, well, he has some holding penalties here and there. Yeah, that's because his right tackle was never on the same level with him when they're running twists and stunts. So if they ever get that fixed, then there will be less holding, and that holding has to happen so that 15 doesn't get hurt. So, I mean, all that combined and everything, like, I'm just telling you, yeah, Creed, Trey, those two together, that's the tandem you want road grading people for the next 4 to 5 years after the season.
Yeah, and there was I thought a real turnaround from the first half to the second half for the offensive line, because Mahomes was consistently under pressure in the first half. There wasn't a huge amount of running lanes, and I think Vita Vea had 2 sacks in the first half. He was absolutely just living in the Kansas City backfield in the first half.
Yeah, he had a timeshare.
That completely turned around in the second half.
And part of it is because when you run at somebody, they get tired. And if you start doubling and you start leaning on defensive linemen, they get tired over time. So that's how you eliminate pass rushes, is you lean on them and you tire them out. That's the number one answer to helping your tackles.
No, it was an impressive turnaround to me, and certainly the Chiefs had a lot of success running the football in the second half. I think Kareem had 7 carries, I think, in the first half, so it indicates he took the ball 20 times in the second half. Mm-hmm. I mean, that was certainly a case of just the Chiefs, 1, wanting to control the clock a little bit, and 2, just pound away certainly at the end. I mean, once again, you get into the goal line. Kareem Hunt is pretty much guaranteed that if you hand the ball to him 3 times from inside the 5-yard line, he's getting into the end zone. Might be the first try, might be the third try.
Yes, he will keep his legs driving, and he is. I just hope he gets up every single time that I'm watching him run. With some of the hits he takes, I'm like, man, just get up, because they don't have another you on the roster right now.
Yeah, he's running fierce, and we did get a little bit of an update during the game from at least the broadcast, talking about Isaiah Pacheco. Sounds like he could be back maybe within the next month. You were telling me before, because I didn't get to hear it, but you were updating me about what Lisa Salters reported, that he was running last week this week during practice. That's a good indication.
Yeah, so for people that are watching this later than Tuesday morning, if you didn't get to see it on Monday Night Countdown, Lisa Salters said when she chatted with the Chiefs in probably one of her production meetings, they said that Isaiah ran in front of the trainers the previous Thursday, didn't have shoulder pads or helmet, but ran and did some cutting and everything. So you're not doing that if you're not having him come back sooner rather than later and seeing where everything's at and how he would do the next day, how the swelling would go, all that type of stuff. So those are like the infancy steps to try to potentially get him back, sooner rather than later.
Yeah, you get Pacheco back, and now you've got a 1-2 punch. That certainly helps, and certainly help keep Kareem a little bit healthier and rested going into the postseason. I think that obviously the Chiefs would be able to love to get those two on the field and be able to give Kareem a little bit of a break, because he has had quite the workload since he's gotten here.
Yep.
One of the other things that really stood out to me about this game, obviously, was, there were some unsung heroes that had a couple of, big moments in this game. Obviously, Justin Watson revenge game, Nick. He had a season high receiving yards tonight. Defensively, too. I mean, Chris Rowland-Wallace got a lot of playing time. Jaden Hicks had a couple of moments. We're starting to see that. We've been talking about this, but we're starting to see now the Chiefs going to that draft class and going to some of the younger guys. Now, hey, it's going to be affected by some of the injuries. They would have loved to be able to get Jared Wiley more involved over the second half of the season. That won't happen now. But we're starting to see that, aren't we, as far as to getting some of these young guys more reps, more playing time, to give some of the other guys a little bit of a breather.
Yeah, it's going to be slow and steady pace, and Buffalo will be a big landmark moment for a lot of them, depending on how much they get snap count-wise, because that's going to give them a real good feel and taste of what playoff football is going to be like for them in a handful of weeks after that.
We have the trade deadline coming up on Tuesday, and obviously the Chiefs have already been busy because they made the trade for DeAndre Hopkins, made the trade for Joshua Uche, and we got to see his first work on Monday night, Nick, and it seemed impressive to me. I mean, it was a lot of third down work. I mean, I expect him to be a third down pass rush specialist. You got to see his speed. You got to see his energy. What did you think? Because I liked what I saw.
Yeah, I mean, he's got speed around the corner. He didn't get to utilize it on the wet field in the way that he probably would have on a dry field and everything. So we'll see what that's like in the weeks ahead if he gets that opportunity. But there's one time where the Bucs went out of their way to chip him, and he was able to avoid the chip, and in doing so, he was able to stop that halfback screen from turning into a problem like it was going to. So the Bucs basically kind of shot themselves in the foot with that one, and they basically helped the Chiefs be able to stop and slow that down because they weren't planning on Uche, one, staying up, and then two, having the speed to go run that down.
There's a lot of ways to contemplate the trade deadline, but let's talk about it from this standpoint. I mean, the Chiefs have made a couple of moves already. There's a lot of speculation out there about, that they could still be in the market. My question is, should the Chiefs make a move? Do they need to make a move, Nick?
When you look at tonight alone, there's three questions they have to ask themselves, and one of them people are going to roll their eyes at, and that's fine because I've said it for a while now. But I'll say that one for last. At cornerback, they're going to have an answer that isn't Joshua Williams being undisciplined in the way that he is. You can guarantee 2 to 3 penalties a game from him right now, and he puts them in holes sometime that extend drives and cost them, and he shouldn't be doing that in year 3 of this. We'll see if the things change in the weeks ahead, but right now he's kind of forced himself to be more of a liability than an asset, and that's something that he's going to have to improve upon, or they're going to have to find somebody else to potentially be in that spot. So cornerback's a big one. Question is, do they need another receiver? and I don't have that answer. But is there somebody out there that can give them, if something happens, do they need another wide receiver that can kind of help them? Because if McColl went down seriously tonight, that may have jumped up to number one. But that also gives you the scare to have to discuss that as a group if that does need to happen, and there's another person that they need to bring in to the scheme that fits it and can do it like Hopkins can. Do they need a little bit more speed, or do they just want another possession receiver that's a veteran that's reliable? That's up to them. And then I'm going to say it anyways. I would be calling the Dolphins and see if there's any running back that they would be willing to part ways with. Because the Chiefs, and when I talk about explosiveness, people think that means I'm talking about somebody that's 4-2 like Pacheco. No, they don't have somebody that can turn it on a gear. Kareem did a couple times tonight when he ran angry there in the fourth quarter, but that's not sustainable for an entire game for him. There's got to be somebody that can help them in their screen game, and that's what they don't have right now. They don't have anybody in their screen game like Jamal Charles was, or Damian Williams, that could really kind of be that big asset that they could use when a pass rush is getting them, or even Jerick McKinnon. They just don't have that guy. I mean, Samaje Perine, he's a good pass protector, but I mean, his tank's running on empty, and like, that's not to be mean. That's just the reality. He's given what he's got, but there's not a lot of burst left there anymore. That's why the Broncos released him. And so all that, and Carson Steele's just kind of plow ahead right now, and maybe get a yard or two, but he's so worried about protecting the ball and not fumbling so that he can stay on the field that he's not running the same way he was in preseason. So like, he's more hesitant than he was before, and things are going quicker than they were during preseason for him. So all that combined, if that happened to fall in their lap, I would not be upset about it, but they may think that Pacheco's the guy that gets them to that front, and that would be a big reason why they wouldn't make a move.
Yeah, I mean, I'm of the philosophy that I just don't think that the Chiefs are going to make one more move. They're positioned to the point where they could, but once again, a lot of the same principles that we talked about with DeAndre Hopkins still exist, which is that regardless of the position, if the Chiefs want to acquire anybody, it's got to be somebody who has an affordable base salary for 2024. It can't be anybody expensive. It can only be somebody that you're only going to spend maybe $1 million or $2 million the rest of the way. It's got to be somebody that if the giving away team, the sending team, can't be asking for a day 1 or a day 2 pick. It's going to have to be a day 3, and it might even be a future day 3, because the Chiefs right now don't have a ton of 2025 draft picks on day 3. So you might have to settle for 2026. And it can't be somebody that's like, I keep repeating, it's got to be somebody who's going to fit into that locker room and at least help them at a spot where they need depth. I mean, corner to me is the big place,
right?
But the Chiefs don't need another number 5 corner. They've got that down. They're good there. I mean, it's whether they can get a number 2 or a number 3, somebody who can push Josh Williams, maybe even replace Josh Williams or push him down a spot in the depth chart.
Right.
I just don't know if that player's available. I know it hasn't been available. Question is really, did anything change on Sunday to make somebody available? And the Chiefs will check it out, but that's the one and only place that I would go. I mean, other than that, I mean, we're talking about an 8-0 team, Nick. I mean, why are we nitpicking, telling the document how this team needs to fix itself?
Because the Chiefs have gotten to the point where that's all that you're able to do. It's not about why they lost the game anymore, because they haven't lost since Christmas of last year. The amount of holidays that we've had since the last time that they lost?
Quite a few.
Yeah.
I mean, Easter, we had Arbor Day.
Go back further. You got New Year's Eve. You got New Year's Day. You got Valentine's Day. You got St. Patrick's Day.
Groundhog Day.
You've got Groundhog's Day. You've got one of the President's Days. You've got Memorial Day. You got Veterans Day.
Mother's Day. Father's Day.
4th of July.
Sunday. Daughter Day.
You've got Labor Day. You've got Halloween.
Tight End Day.
Yeah. I don't know if the government recognizes that one, but we almost had two whole hands worth of holidays that have happened since the last time the Chiefs lost on a holiday. So, like, that's what it is, man. Like, that's all we have. That's all we have is just to nitpick what they need to be able to make it to win a third championship based on what we kind of see. So, but don't worry, the national media will be unimpressed yet again, and they will talk about how either the Bills or Ravens are better than the Chiefs, and the Detroit Lions are much better than the Chiefs, and let them do it. Like, that's fun. Let them talk about them. That's completely fine.
All right, Nick, I got one last question for you, and it is the question that I heard asked of pretty much everyone post-game tonight.
What is it?
It is, were you surprised that Todd Bowles did not go for 2?
Todd Bowles didn't seem like a very risky guy. Like he's like, if you watch him on the sidelines throughout a game, anytime they show him, he just looks emotionless all the time. And you're like, how does that guy get players to, like, rise up for him on the team and, like, be amped up for him if he's just emotionless on every single play, it looks like. But I mean, the guy knows his defense, and he's been under the Andy Reid tree before. So if I were in their shoes, you probably do it. And the ending of that felt a lot like the Baltimore Ravens game in week 1 for me. Like, I'm like, okay, they're driving down the field. They just got the potential game-tying touchdown. Chiefs defense looks a little tired. They're going to go for 2, and, the Chiefs are going to have 12 to 25 seconds to be able to try to get down the field and everything. And then they didn't go for it. They get the field goal, and I'm like, okay, Chiefs get the ball, and they do their ground and pound. Then Baker's not getting the ball back, and that's what happened.
Yeah, I was not surprised that Tampa Bay didn't go for 2 there, because it's a coach's decision. I mean, it's not what the analytics say, as we talk about these days. That's not a slam dunk. I mean, it's basically a coin flip, and it's a coach's decision. And so, no, I wasn't surprised that Todd Bowles didn't go for it. Hearing his rationale that with the field conditions and the wet turf and everything, that he wanted to kick it and take his chances in overtime. I thought he was kind of overlooking the possibility of Mahomes with 27 seconds and 3 timeouts. And I thought that the Chiefs might attack the middle of the field a little bit more and maybe pound it away with Kareem Hunt a little bit, just because they only needed 31 yards to basically get into field goal range. So I was a little surprised that the Chiefs were so ineffective on that drive. I thought they might attack it a little bit differently, but still worked out well. Chiefs are 8-0, Nick.
Yeah. And then Chiefs defense, we'll see what they can do against Denver this week when they play Bo next. I think they'll have a better performance. We'll see what the field looks like after KU's been on it, and what the field crew has to do after this Chiefs game, and see what the conditions are on Saturday for the KU game. Hopefully there's nothing rain-wise, and then when the Chiefs play there on Sunday, we'll see how that field does. I know Travis and them, for people that don't know, Travis Hogan and them, they work their tails off, as Coach Reed would say, to get that field as good as it can. So, I mean, they'll do everything in their part. So, but that's a lot of wear and tear over a week.
Yeah, 3 games in 7 days. They've got their work cut out for them.
Which is weird with how little the Chiefs have played at Arrowhead in the past month and a half.
Oh, I know. Exactly. And we get a noon game Sunday, Nick. We don't have to be recording a podcast at 2:26 a.m.
No.
Well, speaking of the time, Nick and I are going to go sleep for a couple hours, and then if I can talk him into it, because he hasn't actually told me, but I always assume, because Nick's always there for the Chiefs Digest Q&A on Tuesday nights. So if I can talk him into it.
We'll see how I'm feeling and go from there.
We'll see how Nick's feeling. But I'll be there for sure. And so we'll be able to talk about the trade deadline, if anything happened, answer your questions about this game and what's to happen coming up this week against the Broncos. So, and then, of course, on Sunday after the Broncos game, you'll catch 41 is the Mike podcast in your stream, wherever you get your podcast. And once again, always asking you if you can give us a 5-star review. Here on YouTube as well. Hit the bell, subscribe. We appreciate it. Helps everybody help find the podcast and get a new audience. We always appreciate being able to reach new friends here, Nick. So
yes.
Well, with that, we'll wrap this one up. Chiefs win 30-24, 14 wins in a row, 8-0 on the season, and the Denver Broncos coming up next week.
And until next time, I bid you adieu.
You've been listening to 41 is the Mic, presented by KSHB 41, your home of the Chiefs and Chiefs Digest.